What if gravity stopped working? You are probably thinking, what will happen to us if gravity stops working for a second or two? Will we fly away? Well, yes, we would if we weren't tethered to the planet by our intense gravitational bonds. But even if we were not attached to Earth in any way, it is unlikely that we could survive for long without the stabilizing effects of the Earth's gravitational field. The Earth's gravity keeps our feet firmly planted on the ground and gives life its familiar structure. When you stop feeling gravity, your body will keep moving upwards with all of the other objects that are bound to the Earth. You will go up and up into the sky, perhaps reaching the moon in about 96 minutes. But once there, you will find it hard going any higher because the moon's gravity will be pulling you down. But what would happen to other things if gravity stopped working? What would happen to birds in flight, planes in the sky, rain in the clouds, cars on the road, buildings on the land? What would happen to Earth itself? Let's find out. If gravity stopped working for just a moment, birds in mid-flight would freeze in their tracks and then start falling to the ground. Same goes for airplanes. They wouldn't be able to stay airborne and would come crashing down to Earth. Cars, buildings, and other objects would start floating away unless anchored to the Earth somehow. Rain would stop falling from the sky and clouds would drift aimlessly around the globe. Oceans would no longer be held to the Earth and would start drifting into outer space. Without gravity, water would still exist, but it would have no weight and it would drift up into the atmosphere where it would form an enormous cloud that would engulf the entire planet. Oceans would recede from Earth's surface and form giant bubbles that would float away into outer space. All the water in the world would eventually drift away into outer space unless somehow it was pulled back to Earth's surface by the forces of atmospheric drag. Since Earth is a planet with a large amount of mass, it has a gravitational pull that extends far out into space. This is what keeps the planet together and makes it possible for objects to exist on its surface. Without gravity, Earth would start to fall apart literally. Our planet would begin to break apart into smaller pieces and would eventually disintegrate completely. When gravity stops working, Earth would be the least affected by this phenomenon because it is so massive that it doesn't need gravity to hold it together. However, the moons and other small celestial bodies would be more affected. In fact, some of the moons might start orbiting the Earth instead of being stationary in the sky. If gravity stopped working for a day, animals would find it difficult to move around. Their muscles would atrophy and they would become weak and thin. Plants would also suffer from the lack of gravity and would begin to wilt and die. The ecosystem would collapse and the world as we know it would end. Without gravity, people would not be able to walk or stand upright. We would be forced to crawl around on all fours like animals. It would be very difficult to do anything because our muscles would not be strong enough to support our weightless bodies. It would be impossible to breathe because the air would not be heavy enough to push oxygen into our lungs. Our eyes would pop out of their sockets because the muscles that control them would not be able to hold them in place. Our digestive system would be in chaos because the food we eat would not be heavy enough to pass through our intestines. It would be impossible to sleep because our brains would not be able to produce the chemicals that make us sleepy. Our hair would fall out because the roots that hold it in place would not be strong enough to withstand the force of our blood flow. In short, we would not be able to survive for more than a few hours without gravity. And although we would probably die quickly, it would take much longer for the Earth to feel the effects of the disappearance of gravity. Our planet would continue to rotate on its axis and orbit the sun for many months before it started to fall apart. So let's just hope that gravity doesn't stop working anytime soon. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.